Woo! I'm doing this joke again even though it wasn't in the miniseries. Hello, beautiful watchers. I quite like doing these little informal review episodes for the series of unfortunate events on Netflix, and with the recent announcement of the director for the upcoming Dune reboot, I've decided it's time to finally do the thing I promised to do years ago and review the Dune miniseries. I am just planning to do this one episode for the whole season, but perhaps when the new film comes out we can make it a hat trick. Before we go any further, obviously Dune is not the kind of novel you can just quickly skim through to top up your information, so I haven't reread it since the last time I covered it in an episode, so if I get a few details wrong in this one, I apologise in advance. And, as per usual, spoiler warning, I'm going to be talking about the events of the first Dune novel, some of the plot points in the sequels, the David Lynch film, and the miniseries, so if you're planning to read or watch any of these and want to be surprised, maybe skip this video for now. Even though this isn't a full Lost in Adaptation episode, I did the survey again, because the last time I covered Dune, I was just asking my friends on Facebook, so I wanted to see if my Patreons were significantly better read, and yes, they are. Splendid. Now, don't take this too seriously, but I've never quite understood why Dune is so appealing to Americans. I mean, it's a story about an outnumbered group of religious fanatics that declare a jihad on, yes, that's the actual word used, and overcome a vastly more technologically advanced nation of invaders who have come to mine their homeland's precious resources. I mean, I know that's a huge oversimplification, but you can't ignore the fact that this sounds an awful lot like the war in the Middle East if the USA were the bad guys. Okay, moving on, I just want to say first that no matter what else I say in this review, I am happy that this series exists. I mean, I love sci-fi, and I like Dune, and past experiences have shown me that sometimes in order to get a really great adaptation of something, you have to make a few average at best ones first to work out all the issues. The opening narration to this almost drove me around the fucking bend. You see, in the books, the words Arrakis, Dune, desert planet get repeated over and over again, but the episodes...
Arrakis, Dune,
desert...
of the Empire.
Here we go. Arrakis,
Dune,
desert... Finish the sentence!
greatest treasure.
I've found that usually when they remake a famous adaptation, it tends to be much more accurate to the book the second time around. I mean, in the case of The Shining, that was the whole reason it got made in the first place. Combine that with the fact that they added the author's name to the title, and I was expecting something mad crazy loyal like The Hunger Games or The Shawshank Redemption, but honestly, while it was more accurate than Lynch's attempt, it didn't really wow me or anything. Say what you like about Lynch, he did budget his time well. I mean, it was a crazy long book, but he did cover all the essentials in the one movie. So, the biggest non-adaptation related issue with the miniseries? Well, it's gotta be the CGI, hasn't it? The early 2000s were in that glorious time period where everyone thought that computer-generated imagery was God's gift to filmmaking, but didn't quite realise yet just how badly it was going to age, I mean, even compared to cheaper effects. Sometimes it was better than others. I mean, they clearly went all out for the first time you see a sandworm with a... But, I mean, the rest of it's like... Oh, buddy, no. I also personally found the special effect that they used to give everyone the blue eyes, like, to be fucking horrendous! And not just because they decided to make them glow, and everyone ended up looking like alternative Jawas. On the close-ups, you could see the parts of their eye that they couldn't be arsed photoshopping, and worst of all, when the characters turned side on, it just fucking vanished! You could see perfectly normal eyes! It was terrible! The budget was also clearly not quite enough for what they wanted to do. I mean, some of the sets look quite good, like I was actually particularly impressed with the interior of the palace, you know, when the Atreides are setting up shop in their new digs. But I mean, a lot of the desert shots, it was just super embarrassingly obvious that it was just a studio filled with sand. Also, both the major conflicts started out quite well, but then either time jumped or descended into nice cheap montages quite quickly. Though it is worth noting that while this does put it at a disadvantage to the movie, the book actually did the same thing as well, preferring to describe like more personal one-on-one battles, like with Paul and Gurney at the beginning, or him and Fade at the end, so it's technically an adaptation win. The director of this really liked to be clever with his use of lighting, having the sunset really fast during conversations, so it goes from yellow to blue while they're talking. I thought this was really cool the first few times they did it, but it kinda got overused by the end. The miniseries does not go for Lynch's gross out factor, thank the gods, so there's no space aids on the Baron, no freaky zombie doctors, no squishy rat drinks, no raw cow tongue eating, and no heart stoppers. I did not miss them. However, there are quite a few things in this that are just too similar to the way that Lynch did them them to be a coincidence. There's the Gonja bar test that shows what Paul thinks his hand looks like inside the box. Then there's how they portray the voice.
I am certain there has got to be a more subtle way of them doing this.
Then there's the montage of Paul and the Fremen disrupting spice production, and of course there's the flying fat man. So I would have to say that while the makers of this series clearly didn't want to go down the same path as Lynch, they were either big fans or at least aware of how popular his film still is. The still suits were a lot better in this. I mean, Lynch made them these big, cumbersome spacesuit looking things, but if memory serves, they were pretty much like skin-tight items worn underneath desert-appropriate clothing in the book. Even though Islamophobia wasn't as rampant in the world when the original Dune was made as it is today, I was a little suspicious that that might have been the reason that Lynch ditched the robes in favour of bigger looking still suits. Despite this series having so much more runtime to work with, I swear the editing feels super rushed. I mean, it transitions from a normal scene to an artsy dream sequence and then back again with like no warning or setup. It was just really jarring. Boobs. I can't remember if this was ever explained in the books in the end, but how the fuck does Arrakis maintain an oxygen atmosphere without any plant life to convert the carbon dioxide output of the population? I mean, I should look that up or that's going to bother the shit out of me. How does Arrakis maintain a breathable atmosphere in Dune? Yeah, I can't find anything explaining it. The accents in this kind of bothered me. I mean, I like a good diverse cast, but none of the accents seem to coincide consistently with any one location or walk of life. Instead of having one accent for all the different planets or all the different houses, they all seem to be a complete mix. I mean, the Baron was English, but his nephew Fade was American, and the Emperor was Italian, but his daughter was English. I was always going to be disappointed in Gurney. I mean, the actor for him wasn't great anyway, but even if he had been, you just can't follow Patrick Stewart. It can't be done!
Atomics!
Ooh, let me hear that again.
Atomics!
Ooh, just one more time.
Atomics!
That man's voice somehow makes nukes sound more powerful. Still no blue lips on Dr. Yui, and now no red lips on any of the Mentats. I mean, I guess they must have spent all their budget on the CGI and couldn't afford some fucking lipstick. Well, at least they're treating the navigators with more respect this time, what with the oh, what the fuckity fuck? No, I'm just kidding, I'm just kidding. I don't actually mind seeing the navigators as long as they don't do something super out of character, like, I don't know, going to see the Emperor in person. I'm quite pleased with myself for coming up with the name for the Legolas effect. Assuming I actually did, I haven't actually checked to see if that was already a thing. Anyway, I'm trying to think of a similar catchy name for when an adaptation feels the need to hype up a scene from a book and make it way more action-packed than it was before, because it seems to be happening more and more these days. There were all of those examples in the Harry Potter movies and The Hobbit, and now this, because the sandworm almost swallows Duke Leto's hovercraft as they're getting away. He's like, dodge! They kept that the Baron was gay, but it looks like they may have raised the age of the people he was having sex with because they didn't want to go into the whole paedophile thing, which, you know, that's fair. They did include that he seemed to be sexually attracted to his nephew Fade, so, you know, that was sufficiently fucked up. I'm like 90% sure he was in fact fucking him in the book, because I definitely remember at a point early on he says, let's have something to eat before we go to bed. I mean, yeah, the character is meant to be fucking vile. Paul is quite a short person in this, which is good, that's accurate to the book, but he's still a lot older than he was originally. I mean, I'm not super complaining about that because my exasperation towards child actors is well documented. Speaking of which, Alia, please stop talking forever. I almost laughed myself silly during the Hunter-Seeker attack because the only reason I could think of behind them adding in the cute Fremen girl is, what's the point of having the lead do something cool if there's only an old woman there to be wowed by it, you know? You're gonna have sexual tension or there's no point. Oh, William Hurt, maybe just don't do sci-fi, it's clearly not your thing. Joking aside, I do have a lot of issues with this version of Duke Leto, and Hurt's underwhelming acting is just a small part of it. In the book, he was the one who decided to give the extra water from the palace away for free, and I'm pretty sure he was also the one who figured out that if a Fremen spits at you, it's a sign of friendship, not disrespect. So the show gave a lot of its achievements away to Paul and Jessica, which on one level makes sense because it is better to develop the characters that aren't going to be killed off in the first episode, but the flip side is it vastly subtracts from any strong feelings you might have had about his death. The almost complete absence of Thufir Howard, the soldier mentat, is I think one of the worst adaptation-related sins of the miniseries. I was really hoping this would be his chance to shine after the film's terrible portrayal of him, but I mean, even though it's not addressed, I guess he must have been killed in the Harkonnen attack, because that's the last you see of him in this. Some of his role in the book was absorbed into other characters, like Gurney thinking that it was Lady Jessica who betrayed the Duke. The miniseries really doesn't have much excuse for leaving stuff out. I mean, maybe if they stopped replaying the same dream sequence over and over again, they would have had time for poor Thufir, I'm just saying. Incidentally, is it Harkonnen or Harkonnen? I mean, I can never decide, and you all know my track record when it comes to pronouncing things. I could be wrong here, because I have to admit my mind did wander a bit in places while watching this, but I don't remember them really properly explaining what mentats are and their computating ability, or how Paul was a mentat Bene Gesserit hybrid. The other big divergence from the original book is how much they play up Princess Irulan. I mean, even though she is considered the de facto narrator of the books, her actual role in the story, at least in the first novel, was she was just there with her father at the end, and Paul was like, hey, we're getting married, and she was like, yeah, it looks like it. I mean, she didn't do anything particularly good, and by good I mean, you know, truth, justice and freedom, but I did get a serious protagonist vibe from her and all the stuff she was doing, like defying her father and trying to find out the truth behind the slaughter of House Atreides. Though how she went about doing that didn't always make sense to me. I mean, she sent her hot, bald servant to seduce Fade Harkonnen and tried to learn the truth that way, but then she goes and does exactly the same thing herself a bit later. I mean, they didn't establish that the servant had failed in her mission or anything, so why? It was also kind of weird seeing them showing her have some sort of sexual chemistry with Paul, and her getting shocked and offended by the underhand political manoeuvring. I mean, in the sequels, this is a character who was willing to spike Shani's food with contraceptives for years, and like full-on plot against her husband. I guess I will find out how they address this change of character when I get around to watching the next season, but I mean, don't hold your breath for that because I have 50 Shades to deal with right now. The personal shields were a massive, massive disappointment in this. I mean, they started out really well, as it seems the special effects have finally caught up to the look that Herbert described, but I mean, I really shouldn't say started out, because that was the only time they ever show up in this. I mean, come on, even Lynch used them twice. As I explained in the beginner's guide to Dune that I made, that to this day is still pissing off the fanboys, the entirety of combat in this universe, be it personal or warfare, is based around these shields. I mean, if you try to shoot someone wearing a shield with a laser gun, you and your target would explode. And, I mean, they block fast-moving projectile weapons, so when it came right down to it, it was just more efficient to get in close and try to stab people. All but cutting out the shields does make everyone having guns make more sense, but again, there's a flip side, because then the idea that a bunch of knife-wielding desert dwellers would last long in a fight against them becomes fucking ludicrous again. I mean, if they completely catch them off guard by popping out of the sand right behind them, sure, but in the final battle, you see that the Fremen have to run straight at a line of Sardaukar who are firing right at them. I mean, history has shown us that a mass charging of guns never ends well. So in this version, apparently the Baron kept hold of the body of Dr. Yui's wife so that he could mock him with it in the final 10 seconds before he killed him as well. I mean, that seems a tad pointless. Okay, am I going absolutely mad, or did the Baron break the fourth wall right after the Duke Leto failed to kill him? I mean, I thought maybe he was talking to a security camera up in the corner of the room, but I mean, it never cuts to anyone watching him on a monitor or anything, so I don't know. Weird. Another point in Lynch's favour is he actually included Paul and his mother overcoming the guards that were going to kill them in the desert. I mean, I don't get why the Harkonnens would have dropped them off there and then immediately started looking for them right away. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. So, another confusing point, after spending so long building Duncan up as this total badass, they then changed his death from going down holding off an entire squad of Sardaukar to give Paul time to escape to getting hit in the face with a rocket. I mean, I really didn't care for that. Also, what the hell was with that I need to stay with the Fremen like your father wanted bullshit? I mean, Leto wanted a liaison with the Fremen in the hopes that they would serve his house as warriors someday. With his house wiped out and the Duke dead, why the fuck would he want Duncan to stay with them instead of going with and protecting his son, the new Duke? That makes no fucking sense. Some of the actors in this were actually really good. I mean, I don't know if Ian McNeice is a big deal in the US, but over here he's had a great career. others not so much. I mean, the actor playing Paul was staggeringly inconsistent. I mean, most of the time he was decent enough, but others, I just had to pause the episode. I was laughing so hard at his line delivery.
Paul, the storm! We can't go into that!
We have no choice! We have no choice! We have no choice!
Kynes finally gets his fair share of the story in this version, which I liked. I mean, they skipped the weird vision and revelation that he had just before he died, but I mean, that was all internal to his mind anyway, so there's no easy way they could have shown it. Unless they use some sort of weird new narration technique where you can hear the thoughts of whichever character the camera is focusing on. Ah, the world's not ready for that kind of genius. One funny thing though, because they didn't go into the whole the spice gives off a gas and explodes sometimes thing until after it kills Kynes, I kind of thought it looked a bit like he just spontaneously combusted. I mean, I know that was meant to be a sad moment, but... Fun fact, the Fremen can't actually bleed in the books. Their blood clots too fast to avoid wasting fluid. I mean, I know the science is a little bad there. Herbert kinda had a because fuck you attitude towards explaining his biology. Boobs! I noticed they left out Paul's other Fremen name in this. What was it, Orsun? The Fremen like to give everyone at least two. One to be used amongst friends and family, and one sort of more formal term of address. I guess they wanted to keep it simple. It's a minor point, but I think I preferred Lynch's version of the sandworm riding hooks, because, I mean, you really got a sense of the toughness of the sandworm scales, because they had to, like, jam them in and really lever them up. In the miniseries, they're just little hooks that you just pull up flaps, so it kind of looks like the dreaded sandworms are made of squishy foam. They actually kept the father thing in this one. I mean, that's one of the plot points that I wish I'd brought up in my original review, that Kynes was Shanti's I can't remember her name. She was Paul's wife's father, and even more shockingly, the Baron was Lady Jessica's father, even though neither of them knew it. Why did the Baron keep rhyming all the way through this? Please tell me I wasn't the only one who noticed that. I liked that they paid homage to Paul's dread that he was going to have to kill his friend Stilgar eventually, and how he got around that. I also liked that the miniseries actually differentiates between the Baron's troops and the Sardaukar, something the film utterly failed to do. While it was nice that they didn't turn Paul into a full-on rain-making god at the end, I was utterly confused by the bit where water started flowing out from between his legs after he made that speech. I mean, I couldn't tell if he just opened up a hidden tank somewhere and was wasting water, or if he was in fact magically creating it, or if he was just really scared about the upcoming battle. Props to them for including the surprise attack on the Fremen Children's Sanctuary and killing off young Leto II. I mean, it takes balls to include baby murder in your show. Okay, I'm just gonna say it, the worms were cooler in Lynch's movie. I mean, I swear I'm not one of those guys that's always harking on about practical effects over CG, but the worms were just cooler in Lynch's movie. So the weirding way is now teleporting? I mean, I guess that's better than pretending it's some sort of sonic gun that reacts to your voice, but holy hell, is badass martial arts just not cool enough for anyone? Okay, I've just got to show you this clip.
The Guild does not take your orders.
What the fuck is with this shit? Was the director just asleep that day, or had everyone just given up by this point, so the actor decided that interpretive dance meets William Shatner was the way to go? They left all this out, but in the book, Paul's mother tells him that Fade will have been conditioned by the Bene Gesserit to be paralysed if a certain code word is said to him, but Paul refuses to use it, preferring to fight fairly, and also Fade's hidden blade that he tried to kill Paul with gets stuck in the floor, which is what lets Paul win, essentially. So the book had kind of a karma thing going on in the final fight. They ended the season by quoting the last line of the book, which I'm not entirely convinced that they earned. I mean, the third episode was probably the best adaptation-wise of the three of them, and it was closer to the book than the movie, but like I said at the start, this just didn't wow me with book loyalty like I was expecting it to. Despite how hokey I found some of Lynch's creative choices in the film, I cannot deny that I was not thoroughly entertained by it, and I cannot say the same thing for the miniseries. It was just kind of dull through a lot of it. Though, as I said right at the start, I am still happy that this series exists, if nothing else, because I think it will serve as an excellent example about what works and what doesn't in a Dune adaptation. You have to remember that above all else, the spice must flow. Hey beautiful watchers, I just wanted to give you a quick reminder that there's a variety of rewards you can earn by becoming a Patreon, including early access to all videos, getting to be a part of the survey about how many people saw the film and read the book, or playing Minecraft with me on my 24-hour server. Higher level contributors can also join the Dom Skype chat room, and best of all, choose future episodes of Lost in Adaptation. However, if right now you are thinking, my goodness the Dom, I can't do that, I'm trying to fund a musical loosely based on the events of Jurassic World and the giant animatronics are proving much more expensive than expected. Fear not, if you would instead be willing to like, share, subscribe, or a combination of all three, that goes a long way towards helping my channel grow and reach new beautiful watchers. Have a most pleasant day, and I will see you soon.